Join Paul in cyberspace. You're welcome on Craic with Mac.
Paul McCann's podcast series, Craic with Mac. You'll have a cracker of a time.
On the show this week, a great big welcome to Debs, local singer and songwriter. It's wonderful to have you on the podcast this week, Dave.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks very much.
So I'd like to begin talking about your parents, who were Lebanese, and they came to Australia at a young age. Now, it's difficult coming to another country. I don't know if they spoke English when they came here, but how did they actually meet?
Oh, they definitely spoke English. They spoke English and French. At that time, in the 30s and 40s, when my family came, Lebanon was a French-mandated protectorate, and everybody spoke French, English, and Arabic. And they travelled. Their parents had travelled quite a lot. In fact, my dad was born in the West Indies. My grandparents, it's quite a long story, but I won't go there too much. My dad's parents lived in Santo Domingo, which was Spanish West Indies. Dad was born there, and they went back to Lebanon only for a short time in the 30s before coming to Australia. But yeah, they were multilingual, and the same with my mother's family. When they came to Australia, there was no problem with language. They were very European, as many people from Lebanon at that time were. And the people who left Lebanon, and there were hordes of them from the 1800s onwards, left Lebanon under the Ottomans. The opportunities were little. I think Lebanon's famous for exporting intellectuals and people, and especially the Christian Lebanese who moved away from Lebanon. The Muslim movement away from Lebanon was much later, but the Christian Lebanese who moved away were very much European, and they slotted into Australia quite easily, from all I can gather.
We have the legacy of today, great food, for one, that the Lebanese brought to Australia. We're very lucky to have that. And gold, of course, we had a lot of gold that came from Lebanon. And after 1948, I think a lot of the gold went up in price. So a lot of people became rich very quickly with gold. But they were young when they came, and they met each other.
They met in Bathurst. The Debs side, my dad's side, came to Australia before my mum's side, which was, their name was Gahar. And yeah, they met in Bathurst, where they both grew up. They were both kids in Bathurst, and Dad was a few years older than my mum, but yeah, that's where they met, Bathurst, and here I am.
Now, you were in a small place before you went to Young. You were growing up, is it Katakar?
No, Karkor.
Karkor.
Which is a beautiful little historic village in the central west, not far from Bathurst, actually. And my dad, who was a doctor, had a practice in Bathurst, rather in Karkor. And until I was about 6, and we were living there just after I was born, until my brothers and I were of school age, and they made the decision to go to a larger town, which was Young, for better schooling opportunities, rather than us having to travel to Bathurst or whatever.
So that was a little bit of change in your environment. Did you start writing songs at an early age, Dave?
I started writing poetry at an early age. Songs, I didn't start playing guitar till I was probably 18, and but I remember probably when I was about 8, we were set a project at school to write a short story, as teachers do at class, to write something, and which was very commonly done at that period of time in the 60s and 70s. It was a big part of English education. There was always creative writing, and I wrote a short story, and the teacher was sort of impressed, and he said, "David, you got a gift for writing." And at that time I think I knew at about 8 or 9 that I liked writing, and I aspired to write from a very early age.
So then when you picked up the guitar at 18, poetry plus the guitar brought along a song.
Yeah, very much.
Do you remember the first song you wrote?
Well, I remember probably the first song was probably a song called Bluesville, which is on my first album.
You know what? We might actually play that for the listeners now, and then we'll come back and have a talk about it.
Sure.
Okay, for your pleasure on Craic with Mac, this is Debs and Bluesville, which I believe is on the album Lover's Highway.
That's right.
Oh, good. And that was released in 95.
That's right.
So let's all listen to Bluesville now on the programme.
I'm going to Bluesville, my hometown. Going back to Bluesville, my hometown, oh yeah. I'm gonna stand in the main street, look my childhood up and down. My hometown. Been over the ocean, been over land, oh yeah. I've had that Kimberly feeling, had the world in my hand. I said to myself now, comes the time to settle down now. My hometown. My mama and papa ain't there no more, no more. But the folks all gather round and welcome me back to their door. Say we know you've been away, son. Now we know you're here to stay, son. Our hometown. Your hometown. My hometown. My hometown. My hometown. My hometown. Bluesville.
Wow, that was a wonderful song. Now, how did that come to be?
Yeah, it's funny, you know, when I first started playing guitar, I'm essentially self-taught, but I took some lessons from a wonderful guitarist by the name of John Summers, who I'm still in touch with, lovely man. And I had about half a dozen lessons, and one lesson he gave me a chord progression, said, "Okay, Dave, go away until next week's lesson and practice on this chord progression and see what you can come up with." And the following week I came in and I played that song. I'd written it, and I don't want to blow my trumpet, but I think he was a little bit what the? It was a little bit. He said, "Did you write that and all that?" And yeah, and it was pretty much about Carco. That's
in your memory, those were very important years, and those things often flourish in your writing.
Well, very much, and from a personal point of view, Carco was. We left there when I was about 7, and it's a real halcyon period for me because we left Carco when I was about 6. When I was 7, my dad, as I said, was a doctor. He sustained major brain damage in a car accident and never practiced again, and obviously that was a major impact on our lives. But that period up till then, I sort of see Carco as being such golden days. You know, I guess my life, the early part of my life's always been divided into before the accident and after the accident. So there was a lot of that in that song that, in my own mind, just ideal sort of period of my time when Dad was, still 100% functional, and just wonderful memories. So writing Bluesful was a bit of nostalgia in there as well. But it was an important song to me, and I think it's the first song I ever wrote. I may have half written a few bits and pieces prior to that, but I was about 18 or 19 when I wrote that song.
There was a lot of energy that came out in that song because of the images of what you've just said, and you had to walk away from that and sort of move on and into other things, as you were saying, going too young, and there was a new picture in your life, a new environment. I remember when I first seen you and met you, Dave, at the Blue Boar many years ago. It was a folk club there on a Thursday night, and a lot of the local singer-songwriters used to come along. Yeah,
which is of course now the Royal Hotel in Barrow.
That's right. And well, back when it was the Blue Boar, I think they nicknamed it the Syringe Inn from memory. And maybe it was just the clientele that came in, I don't know. But look, it was a lovely spot, and I first heard you play there one night. I think there was a folk festival down at the coast, and maybe you had come up from that. There was a couple of guys from Colorado. You know these people that come around the folk festivals, and you were there, and these guys from Colorado were there, and it was unbelievable. You had the harmonica. I always remember a fellow standing beside you. I'm not sure what his name was. Sort of 5'6", a bit of a beard. I think he played the blues harp, and you were on the guitar, and it was a wonderful occasion because I'd never met you before.
Right.
And shortly after I met you, I was working in the radio with Craic with Mac then. There was an album came out, which was Lover's Highway.
Right.
And I remember the title track. It stands out for me. And a few of the songs, One in a Million too. Where did that come from?
Look, that's one of those things that just fell out of the sky in a few minutes. When the band and I first got together for a rehearsal immediately prior to going into the studio, there was myself and my dear late friend Chris Bailey on bass, Chris from, and Buzz Bidstrup. They were the drummer and bass player with the Angels, Gangajang, and many other bands, and John Stewart and anyway, we're in there rehearsing, and in a break, I just started fiddling with this bluesy thing, and the words came out as we were playing it, and the song wrote itself in about 5 minutes. And
as they do when it's a good song. Usually they come quick, and the way you sort of imaged the song coming like it fell out of the sky is a lovely way to put that, because we don't often know where the songs come from, like they're given to us as a gift. And well, they're not really ours. We put our name to it, but who owns it? Where did it come from? It's like the apple in the garden on your tree. There it is, and you go and help yourself.
There's a perfect example of that in songwriting with a song called Ripple by the Grateful Dead. I won't try and explain the song, but it's about, I think if anybody wants to hear some amazingly well-written songs, have a listen to Ripple by the Grateful Dead off the American Beauty album. It's basically a ripple in still water, where does it come from? It just comes from, there's a well, you know, that you can draw on, that just, it's, I don't know where it comes from, but I think ripple goes a long way towards analogizing just how wonderful the process and magical the process of finding something out of nothing, finding, you know, a diamond where there, you know, is no diamond field, so to speak.
We stumble across it. We find it because we were meant to find it, or, you know, it was given to us because we had to do something with it. And some songs happen just like that. With the album Lover's Highway, the dedication on the album to Brad Tyson, Dave, what was that about?
I started doing regular gigs at the Sutton Forest Hotel in about 1991, and Val Tyson was the publican there, and about, you know, the most wonderful publican I've ever worked for. I did every Friday there for years, and he had a son, Brad, and during that time there, Brad was probably 18, 17, just finishing school, and Brad used to always, he worked at the bar, and he'd always say, Dave, do some of your own songs, you know, I want to hear your songs, do that song, blah, blah, of yours. And he encouraged me always to do original songs, which is wonderful. And during the recording of Lover's Highway, Brad was tragically killed in a traffic accident in Clovelly, and which was sad. He never got to hear the album, and he encouraged me so much to do original songs. So yeah, it was a no-brainer to dedicate the album to Brad.
Well, I hope that wherever Brad is, that he has heard it, because we don't know. These are the things we just don't know.
We don't know.
And in Ireland, we always say they're always around us, you know, and we talk to them like they're still here. And let's hope that Brad was able to, you know, somehow, in the waves, the radio waves, the energy waves, whatever waves are out there, that he's heard the music, and he's still with you in many ways. With the album, the stories to many of the songs, I was intrigued by the 1.5 man band that you mentioned. So who's the half a man?
Now that's got an interesting origin. In the 80s, I'll go back a little. In the 80s, I went and saw George Thorogood and the Destroyers at Sylvania Hotel, and he had a sign on the stage saying, "World's only genuine 3.5 man band." Or rather, no, it was just world's only genuine 4-man band. And the next night I saw him again at Maroubra Seals, the band, and it had world's only genuine 4-man band with the 3 crossed out, and you could see all the crossed out numbers. It was a little joke they did. And as I regularly in the 80s became doing a lot of gigs with the guitar and the harmonica, people would always say, well, "You sound like more people. I'm looking for, hold on, how's he doing that guitar and harmonica and all that?" And that's just something.
The other half of you was doing it.
Well, yeah, it was just a silly joke, really. You know, it's me and the harmonica and all that. Oh well, it's like 1.5 man band, and it's stuck. Yeah.
Someone said to me recently, you know, you've done 5,000 live gigs. Do you keep a record of the number? Or?
Yeah, I've got diaries going back to, you know, all my work diaries, which go back to the middle 80s when I first started doing gigs, then 88 when I went, 85 when I went full time. So a few years ago I went through them and just did a rough calculation, and for the first 15, 20 years I was averaging 3.5 to 4 gigs every week, and I just did some rough calculations, and I worked out that I've well and truly passed the 5,000 mark.
Amazing, Dave. And you've been places like Darwin for the May Day, and you've been to I guess lots of restos, pubs, clubs.
Yeah.
I remember seeing you at the Midgang RSL with the Tangled Up with Bob gig you did. That was a big spinner for you too, wasn't it?
Well, that was a lot of fun. That's something that Chris Bailey and myself and Claire O'Mara and yeah, we put that together as a side thing. They've all got their own projects. The guitarist Dan Rumer from the Krill Sea, Chris from the Angels and Gangajang, and Claire from Bushwhackers and George Washing Machine Band and all that. They have their own projects, they do that, we all do our own thing, but once or twice a year we got together to do this band doing Dylan songs, and it's just a wonderful thing we enjoy doing very much.
When I listened to you on stage, I didn't count how many numbers you did, but you knew each one lyrically perfectly, and I'm thinking, this guy's obviously got an IBM computer in his head, or he's a walking jukebox. How can he remember all those lyrics?
You know, it's funny, I did a calculation there too, that in each Tangled Up in Bob gig, there are around about 14,000 words to remember. Now, that comes to another thing. If I sit here now and try and recite a song, I've got to stop and think about it.
Okay.
But as you would know yourself as a musician, Paul, when you start singing, there's a flow, and one thing follows, and the words just move to the next. So
like a picture, you see it.
yeah,
and
that's
it comes
right.
to you.
Yeah, if I sing it, I can sing the words, but if I start writing them out, I've got to stop and think about it. So it is, you fall into a rhythm. It's and I don't think I've done one in 40 or 50 Tangled Up in Bob gigs. I don't think I've done one where I haven't stuffed up some song.
If it ever did happen, you would have to ad lib and make up a few lines.
Oh yeah, you just
to get through.
Just grin and get on with it. Yeah.
The gift of your music and your songs, once again, you've shared all over the place around Australia. Is there any one place that you would say you enjoyed most?
Of gigs in Australia? Oh, look, I don't think I could single out one place definitively. I must say I love going to Darwin. There's a wonderful music scene in Darwin where there's a great appreciation of original music. I think overall country areas. I really like doing country areas.
You're playing to different sort of audience, aren't you?
Well, I guess so. I think perhaps it's just me. I prefer country areas personally.
With the song "Love That Drive," you released it as a CD on its own. And how did that song present itself to you?
After recording Lover's Highway on 95, it was about 1997 or 8. I did a run of gigs with a band, the drummer being the same guy who's done my last 2 albums, and we did Ningen, Mildura, 2 at Broken Hill, then we picked up 1 along the way at Gulgong, and it was just us in the car with the trailer and the PA on the back, and just big miles, lots of travelling, and yeah, that song was born out of that particular
being on the road.
Love
that, because you have to love it, don't you, in a sense, to be doing it, and if you didn't love it you wouldn't be there behind the wheel, going from place to place.
That's right, you know, like, as one of the lines is, 1,000 miles from show to show you go crazy, or you learn to love that.
And you have to like the person who's in the car with you too.
Oh, that helps, yeah.
But I remember there was a time, I think it was 2015, and you went back to where your mum and dad came from, to Lebanon. And that must have been...
I'd never been there. I went there.
Sorry, I thought maybe you'd been there before.
No, I hadn't, no.
Did you fit in well with the people? And
very well. Look, I have family still there, many family, and many of them I'd only gotten to know in the preceding years through Facebook and through a Facebook page that brought people from particularly my dad's village together, and it was a very special time.
Would have been playing your own original songs.
Yeah, the gig in Beirut was one of the best gigs I've ever had in my life.
What was it like? Can you give me an image of the gig?
Well, it's okay. The image I remember most is I did the gig. It wasn't a huge gig. There were probably 100, 120 people, but they listened to every song. And at the end of the gig, a younger person, probably only in his 20s, came up and said, I enjoyed the gig. I particularly liked the line in that song where you say blah blah blah, duh, and then the line that followed said this, this, and I'm thinking,
he's listened.
He's listening, and they got it. You know, it's it was.
It's more than just that was a nice song. They've given you an interpretation and what it did to them. Actually, thinking about that aspect, because while we're talking, I'm thinking, okay, he's been on the road, he's been in the air, he's been in the skyways, and you've done a lot of travelling. Why don't we have a listen to that song, Love That Drive?
Sure.
And we'll be straight back after this short break. And here we have Debs from the CD, Love That Drive.
It runs real smooth, took me west where the broken hills give up their steel. Out in the land of sunsets, a bit of oil and a change of wheel. Then north where the sun and sugar fields blow my mind. Just drive right on through the rain and sun, through the fields of grain and the sugar cane. When you work this land with guitar in hand, you go insane, or you learn to love that drive. I went home for Christmas, you and me and that old cherry tree and the lambs that survived are doing fine. Could use some rain though. On to the Rock and Darwin, down south through the snow in June, and north where the sun and sugar fields blow my mind. You just drive right on through the rain and sun, through the fields of grain and the sugar cane. When you work this land with guitar in hand, you go insane, or you love that drive. This old car's a good one, gets me lost, gets me found out west where the broken hills give up their steel. And in this land of sunsets, 1,000 miles from shore to shore, you go crazy if you don't learn to love that drive. You just drive right on through the rain and sun, through the fields of grain and the sugar cane. When you work this land with guitar in hand, you go insane. Oh, you just drive right on through the rain and sun, through the fields of grain and the sugar cane. When you work this land with guitar in hand, you go insane. Oh, you learn to love that drive. You gotta love that drive, or you just go crazy. You gotta love that drive.
Welcome back to the programme. It's good to have your company on Craic with Mac. Dave, it's great to have you on the show. Would it be true to say that you're a poet first and then a musician second?
Yeah, I perceive myself that way. Yeah, I think when I was very young, as I said, I aspired to write, and admired writers. I mean, my first aspiration was to write books, write novels, and that's one that's still there. It's one of the big bucket list things. But I always wanted to write novels, and now that my kids have grown up, but it's all about me. I hope to have more time to actually do that. But I definitely feel as myself as a writer first and foremost.
So with Love That Drive, as you're driving, were you driving, or was you had another driver?
Oh, we shared the drive.
Okay. So when you weren't driving, then you were writing that song, basically.
Yeah, the song in my head. I guess the setup was happening while we were driving, but the actual writing of it was probably a couple of months later.
Oh, so a kind of way you accumulated all the information in your head, and then when you had a bit of time, it just came through, like the waters, and the reservoir were opened up, and they all came out, and you wrote the song. Isn't it wonderful how you look at life and you see things or you meet people, and it's only later on that you have the time that comes, something about that person, about that place you are, and you write a song about it. With your latest album, Can't Feel the Moon, I'm amazed at the songs. There are so many great songs. In particular, the one about the shrines on freeways and country roads, you've summed up in Flowers on the Road. And I really do hope that people out there that listen to that song, somehow it might have an impact on them or someone they know.
I don't think there's anybody that hasn't known somebody who's been lost on the road, and you can't drive anywhere without seeing those, flowers on the road, etc.
It's a very powerful image.
It's a poignant song, and I'd like to think if anything comes out of that song, that people might hear it and just take a little bit of pause and just slow down a bit.
Make them aware.
Every time you see flowers on the road, just get home to see your kids. Your family. Just
because it happens quickly, in seconds. A life can be lost, or more than one life can be lost, and they become a shrine on the road, a country road, or on a freeway. And more we're seeing these flowers on the road. I think it's a great song, Dave.
Thank you.
There's two other songs that really stand out, Dave. The Little Traveller. I worked a while with the homeless in the UK, and it's a great song because it addresses that issue, the runaway. Where did that come from?
Yeah, it's I did a series of gigs for quite a few years supporting a couple of wonderful American artists by the name of Kieran Kane and Kevin Welsh, who I became friends with, particularly Kevin. And I did a gig in Balmain with them one night, pardon me, and the following night I did a support gig with them in Tamworth. And during the 24 hours between those gigs, that song just was running in my head, and I remember scrambling in the motel room up in Tamworth. I was on stage, another half hour, I've got to get there for sound check. I'm on stage in half an hour, but I'm going to finish this song and I'm going to perform it tonight. And I quickly finished writing it and performed it that night. And that was probably inspired by Kevin Welsh and his wonderful songwriting style more than anything. Wasn't particularly inspired by any person in terms of the content. There was no runaway girl, but I don't know, it's it just comes, it's a feel and the words follow.
Songs that we hear sometimes, and I'm very guilty of hearing a song and assuming the story to it until I talk to the songwriter, and then they explain to you, oh no, actually it wasn't about that at all, this is what it was about.
Yeah.
And it's really good to hear where the song comes from. You know, they all have a great story to tell, and about the dangers that exist out there, and about the awareness of life in every way. Of course, the title track itself. Can you tell me about Can't Fool the Moon?
Can't Fool the Moon was another song that came very quickly. I was looking after a property at Woodlands, which is about 15 minutes out of Mittagong. It's part of the Coolaroo property, and I was looking after a house there, and one night, it was 10 o'clock at night, the house is on a hill overlooking a bit of a lake, and there's a full moon, and I'm sitting there by myself late at night looking at the full moon, tinkling my guitar, and click, it just happened. And the song just came. It was written in about 10 minutes, and I think it's about just writing what you see and feel. And now and then, I wish I could latch onto that all the time. You sit down and you want to write something, but it doesn't always happen. But
no.
Sometimes you're just in that magic moment where you're in tune enough to do that.
It's being, I think, there to receive that again. The gift comes, the song comes, and right away, you're taken up in that energy, and it just flows. But the one song I'd like to play for the listeners about people who matter most, because you know how people would say, Dave, I'll see you in the corner at 12 o'clock, and you're there, aren't you? And you shake hands, but if you're not going to be there, you would ring them up and say, you know what, I won't be there at 12, I'll be there maybe next week at 12, or I'll be there tomorrow. Because I think, people that matter most in life are those that they live by their word, and you can rely on them. There's no, there's no guilt attachments. They're honest people. They're good people. They matter most in life. Isn't that right?
Well, very much. It's that song. I started on that, and I put on a post on Facebook that said, finish this line, people that matter, ... And quite a few friends came back with different things, people that matter, people that matter, this, that, and I kept a note of each one. And I picked out a few of those particular ones that people came back with, people that matter, and turned it into a song. And that's how that song came about. Well, I had a little bit of help writing that from my friends. Like I say, I put that post on Facebook, and just to see what people would say. What does everybody think matters about, people that matter?
It's almost like people that matter, and then in brackets, with a little help from my friends, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so.
It's a collaboration of people around you.
Yeah, they didn't have any idea I was writing a song about it. In fact, nor did I at that time. It was just a whimsical thing I did, and it became a song. I
think that'd be a great song to end the program with today, Dave. It's been, a wonderful experience talking to you and finding out a wee bit about your background as a songwriter, a musician, and what makes you, want to do what you do and share your gift, your music. And we're all beneficiaries and lucky to be that. So thank you so much for your time on the podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And the album, by the way, Can't Fool the Moon, it's out there on Spotify. And
it's on Spotify, YouTube, a few other places. I'm not sure exactly where it's gone out to yet. I've only just released it, haven't done any sort of promotion with it yet. And the previous albums I will be putting as well. It'll be on Spotify and YouTube, etc. But I wanted to wait until the new one went on. I didn't want my first online release to be something 20 years old.
It's a lot of hard work to get an album out there. And 2021 people need to be listening to Can't Fool the Moon. So
thank you.
Wish you every success with that, Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Paul.
Let's have a listen now to Dave Debs from Can't Fool the Moon and People That Matter. Thanks for your company on the programme.
People that matter, they stick around. You can't get rid of them no how. They follow you down into the ground if needed. People that matter, they stick around. People that matter, they do not judge. They take you just the way you are. They don't tell you how they want you to be. People that matter, they do not judge. People that matter, tell it like it is. They don't hurt you with no lie. If you need telling, they tell it to you. People that matter, they do not lie. People that matter ain't always people. Look at my dog lying on my coat. Her way of saying I ain't leaving without her. I guess she matters more than most. They just do. No need for telling why that's so. If it's working, just leave it alone. People that matter, they just do. People that matter, they stick around. I sure like the way that sounds. People come and people go. People that matter, they stick around. People that matter, they stick around. People that matter, they stick
around. Come and join Paul in cyberspace. You're welcome on Crack with Mac.
Paul McCann's podcast series, Crack with Mac. You'll have a cracker of a time.